They're gonna let me hit this little. It's not letting me go live on Instagram, but oh well. Instagram's loss. Let me
They'll
try
catch
one
up.
more. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Let me see. Oh. Oh, okay, it's going. Yay.
Lovely.
All right. So, hey, everybody. Hello. Welcome to the show today. We're going to be talking about love. Enough of the fires, enough politics for the moment. Can we just talk about what's underneath it all? Love. You know, I think at the beginning of Eat, Pray, Love, there was this, in the movie version of it, there was this whole thing about people in going through crises all around the world, bombed out cities and the most horrible destruction when they really get together, and what they really want to know about is he going to call me? Does he still love me? Is
I
she
remember
the
that.
one for me?
Mhm.
It's like love is what matters under it. So that's what we're talking about today. I'm with Kate Rose, author of Written in the Stars. You're in for a treat today. So buckle up and let's go. Welcome to the Kelly Sullivan Walden Show, where we explore nighttime dreams, daytime desires, and the best ways to transform the tragic into magic. Because let's face it, we all dream, we all have our blessings, and we all have our challenges, myself included. And I don't want any of us to take any of those things lying down, if you know what I mean. I just wrote a book entitled A Crisis is a Terrible Thing to Waste. I'm excited to explore the topic with you, whether it relates to your waking or sleeping dreams, because we're dreaming all the time, people. So let's make it the best dream possible. I'm so glad you're here. Welcome. So without further ado, Kate Rose, welcome to the show. I've been so loving Written in the Stars, and I want to give a big shout out to Kat from Llewellyn for saying you're gonna love her. Her book's amazing.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, and oh my goodness, Kim Skipper at
Mhm.
New World Library as well. Okay, so Written in the Stars, the astrology of soulmate, karmic, and twin flame relationships. Let's talk about how you came to this body of wisdom regarding spiritual astrology and relationships.
I always say everything that I've learned about relationships, and I see that echoed even in the promo, kind of the introduction to this interview, was everything I went through myself. I found myself getting divorced and being a single mom, navigating dating and unknowingly karmic relationships. And I wrote about it. I just started writing, and do have a background in psychology, but it was my own self awareness and trying to learn, trying to make sense, trying to heal, that I started connecting with other people and working with, and which has led me to the past decade to study that aspect of the art of relationships, and how it really is a vehicle for self growth, and that there is no mistake and there's no failure, because everything that we enter into does serve a higher purpose. After my first book was You Only Fall in Love Three Times, the number one question I got from everybody was, but how do you know which relationship you're in? And, we could say that it should be or is pretty self explanatory. But I think when you're in those relationships, and let's say they are involving some of those childhood wounds, or there's so much chemistry and passion, we really can't see beyond that. I think it can be really challenging. And I have always been a practitioner. I say my earliest memories are reading sun signs, I think when I was about 8 years old in my mother's room. I've always just been drawn to it and started writing astrology pieces for different online publications. And so it started to be that space where when I was talking with people, I started noticing connections and patterns in the astrology charts with the types of relationships they were describing to me. This led me to then ask everyone I possibly know, and those I don't know, for their astrology charts so that I could kind of really
Mhm.
look at this from almost a research perspective and say, okay, are these coincidences? Are these actual things that we can kind of base our knowledge on? And being able to kind of compare and combine that aspect of what relationships we enter into and why, along with the astrology transits, really led to written in the stars. And I think it's so important many times, even if I always say that we're in process. We might not know where our relationship is headed. We might not be able to leave it just yet. But even asking those questions, it means we're in process. And so the goal is to have written in the stars be the confirmation that perhaps someone knows or is able to receive that they do deserve more, that there's nothing wrong with them for feeling this way, and being able to give that grace and that knowledge to themselves so that hopefully they can understand what kind of love they truly want and be able to live more of the life that aligns with them.
This is so important, and I wish I had been given all of this, like, at birth or at least in
Oh,
junior high, but it
absolutely.
seems like if I think about, like, the people in the '70s, like, the cool, groovy
Mhm.
people in the '70s would be like, "Hey, what's your sign?" And, "Hey, I'm your soulmate." And, so soulmate used to seem like the pinnacle, like the
Mhm.
thing that you wanted, like, "I just want to attract my soulmate." And you're like, "Really? Maybe not," and maybe you already have, but the soulmate isn't the be all end all. Years ago, I interviewed, Barbara Marx Hubbard right before she passed, and she
Mm.
she was working on a book about whole mates,
Mm.
which is, I think, what you in your
Mhm.
vernacular, it would be twin flame.
Mhm.
Um, so let's break those down, a little bit more detailed. So you talk about kind of the relationships that we should be in, like the white picket fence,
Mhm.
what society is kind of expects of us is the soulmate. So tell us about that.
Well, and I love the example that you gave of that aspect of, let's say, groovy us in the 70s and, like I'm your soulmate and all of that. Because in the research for this book, what I found is that generationally speaking, grandparents, great grandparents, and even beyond, they did meet and marry their soulmate, and that's where they remained. So
Mm.
even if we're talking about like that evolution of humanity, at one point that was the highest pinnacle of love because we didn't know more, but we also weren't yet in the place as a society to embrace that love represented more. So the soulmate relationship usually tends to be our first significant love. It can be even high school, it can be beyond. We can marry our soulmates and have children together. The soulmate relationship is usually one where it does fulfill what you've been taught about relationships. So it's the ideal partner. It's someone that comes from a similar background or a similar faith, similar geographic region. The soulmate is someone where there's not a great deal of kind of, let's say, edges to rub up against. It's someone that very much fulfills this is the type of person that you'll marry, and this is the type of life that you will have. However, what we're seeing is that in the soulmate relationship, now with how society is evolving, that it's really just the beginning of human growth. Because to remain in the soulmate relationship doesn't mean that it's ever going to be, let's say, quite as toxic as the karmic one. But we're not going to be able to really learn to identify who we authentically are or our truth. We're going to just continue to kind of live life according to this cookie cutter mold or the ideal of expectation for us. So, with the soulmate relationship, the idea is to be able to say, okay, maybe there's nothing really wrong with this relationship, but it doesn't actually feel right either. And I want to start making that journey to be able to identify my truth. And ultimately, it's that aspect of both or one person having a strong desire to want to learn who they are that ends up causing the separation for that connection.
Interesting. And then the be all end all is the twin flame.
It's the twin flame. And in between, though, I always say it's the relationships that usually tend to feel like they break our heart the most, but they're the most worthwhile. And that's the
Mm,
karmic relationships
the karmics, right?
because it's, the soulmate is really the beginning of our journey. And in many ways, in that phase, we're still operating kind of according to the programming or conditioning of our inner child. We're doing what was told of us. The karmic relationship is one in which we usually are craving a lot of passion. We're craving a lot of excitement. We want that twin flame connection. But the
Hmm.
goal of the karmic relationship is that it ends up kind of becoming the situation where we are being kind of offered a gift, even if it doesn't always feel like it, to look into and really heal our inner child. So the karmic relationship is never meant to love us in the ways that we desire or deserve.
Ooh, ooh, we need to pause on that one. That's so
It's a
important.
hard, and that's a hard lesson.
They're never meant to love us in the way we desire, but
Um,
we could, if we wanted to, spend our lives looking for love in all the wrong places, or looking for kindness or respect or
mhm,
reciprocity, and just like completely make ourselves insane. What are we supposed to do with those karmic relationships? Like in an ideal world, I'm thinking of one in my life,
mhm,
that still exists, and it's not a romantic relationship, but it's a person in my life that I have such a deep, deep love for, and we have such a deep, 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 deep connection. She's been like my teacher
mm.
my whole life, and it's the hardest relationship I struggle with. It's the one that hurts the most. So, what's the ideal way to be with those? Do we have to keep them around? I mean, or do we just recognize, okay, this, we label it so that we have a different hope or expectation of it?
So, not necessarily labeling, but let's say using our knowledge to understand the connection. Because
Okay.
without the definition of karmic, we can find ourselves feeling badly for ourselves. We can find ourselves overworking for love, attention, affection. We can feel disempowered. We can kind of devote so much energy to being chosen or feeling and being a certain way that we end up abandoning ourselves. So I
Oh.
always say knowledge really does change everything. It changes ourselves, it changes our perception of a relationship or event. So, with this knowledge, most of the time, friendships or non romantic relationships can be different. But most of the time, with romantic karmic relationships, it ends up having to be a situation of once we are learning and able and brave enough to say that we deserve more, that then becomes the space where we have to have boundaries and many times go no contact with those relationships. With
Mm.
friendships, it can be more challenging. And so, in those situations, it's just about trying to make sure that the other person, as well as ourselves, are honoring our own boundaries.
Ooh, this is so important because I know for myself, this is where the pain is. This is the pain point.
Hmm.
And the twin flame is the aspiration, but the
Hmm.
pain is in the karmic. And it's interesting because it's not just like setting boundaries and having space doesn't mean the relationship stops. I mean, I dream about this person. I'm constantly
Hmm.
having conversations in my head. I'm constantly going into the past to work things out because it's unsettled. And it feels like, at least in my old brain before reading Written in the Stars by Kate Rose, um, I would have told myself the story that I can't rest until we have kumbaya, and kumbaya, according to Kate Rose, Written in the Stars, is is not to be, is not to be. However, the what is to be is a ton of learning and growing, and there could potentially be growth, not just devastation and
Oh,
heartbreak
there's so
and
much
wallowing in
growth.
victimhood.
Yeah, I mean, it truly is the phase where, and that's why many times people mistake the karmic relationship for the twin flame, or they label it as the false twin flame. Um,
Oh, ooh.
so it's because there is so much. It's the catalyst. Like up until our soulmate, we kind of like many children do. We think we know everything, and then life happens, and we realize that we don't. And but we want to. We want to learn more. But the karmic relationship truly is the connection that is the catalyst for who we become and where we go in this life.
I wouldn't do what I do for a living. I wouldn't have written my books if it
Mhm.
wasn't for my karmic relationships. So many of those have been an
Same
attempt
as well
to
here.
fix.
Mhm.
Really?
Yes. Yep.
What?
Absolutely. I would not
Wow.
be anywhere where I am right now had it not been for my karmic relationship. And that's why, yes, it was painful. It was
Yeah.
incredibly heartbreaking. It was in my first book. I there's a whole section called "Crying on the Kitchen Floor." He absolutely was my crying on the kitchen floor moment. I had a couple of
Oof.
them, but I would not
Same.
be. I would not be who I am and where I am now in my life had this relationship not come in. So I can't. I can hold space for the aspects that were unhealthy. I can respect and honor my feelings of being hurt, but I have so much gratitude for this relationship.
Mm. A friend of mine was talking about one of her karmic relationships, and she didn't have she didn't call it that, but she was saying that it's like he's in this cave, this dark cave, and I wanna go in there and talk to him and fix him and bring him out of the cave, but I
Mhm.
never know if I go in that cave if he's gonna kill me or not, and so sometimes I might go in and he might be fine, but other times I might go in and he might have a knife, and so I feel like that's kind of the energy of a karmic relationship where it's like you're constantly on eggshells and in some way it's like it could bring out your worst self because
Mhm.
we're in fear. We can't relax. We can't.
Oh, no, our nervous system is triggered. It's fight or flight. We don't know. There's no sense of stability or consistency in these connections.
Okay, so I want to say a little bit more about this, and then I do want us to get to the twin flame. So we have that to look forward to. But in this particular moment of my evolution, I'm newly allowing myself to have boundaries like I haven't had
Mm.
before, and it's been really, really hard and long and hard earned. But, it feels important, and I'm having these conversations with the people that are close in my life about, like, maybe the new chapter in our lives. I mean, I'm in LA, we just went through the fires, and I'm coming out of it with this sense of, like, I want things different. I want to
Mhm.
be like, I want some things to have burned away, and I want new things to crystallize and be clearer than ever before. So having permission for boundaries that I don't suffer guilt for doing because, "Oh my god, I can't be everything to everybody." What if that whole narrative was just over and just
Mhm.
done? So, can you speak to that? The overgiving, the bending over backwards, the stretching until we break.
Absolutely. I mean, and all of that ends up being a result of our childhood wounds when we're doing that,
Mhm.
because in essence, it's not necessarily our healing adult self that's doing those things. It's the child that never felt chosen or seen or loved or appreciated, or nobody was taking care of them. So they want to take care of their partners. Um,
Mm. Or
but
in
that
my case, it
idea.
was like, "You have this responsibility to take
Mhm.
care of." So, pat on the head.
Exactly. The
Good girl if
parentified, that's how you got your validation. Yep,
yeah.
exactly. And this idea of boundaries, it doesn't mean that we're not here to help others, because I do firmly believe that we are a collective and we are here to be of benefit to others. But the boundary is basically saying that this is how I'm going to treat myself sacredly. It's a boundary is protecting your own sacredness. It's not keeping people out. It's not keeping you from being of benefit to the world around you or the people around you, but it's saying that you deserve it too. And so the boundary is essential for that self love. It's, we think of like, filters in water. If there's no filter, anything can come in. So your boundary is
Mm,
almost like your
that's
personal
good.
filter, so that only what comes in, what moves past that, is what actually honors your worth and your deservingness.
Is there any, because of, I've still got the fires and all the things that
Mm.
have been burned and I know for many of us that who still have homes, there's survivor's guilt, a bit of that, and there's gratitude, so there's both of these things, and I feel like in the karmic relationship, once a boundary's been set, there's there might be some survivor's guilt.
Oh, there
Um,
absolutely is.
yeah? Yeah,
A
like
lot
I'm
of the
taking care
time.
of myself, but I'm
Yeah.
letting somebody else fall off a cliff. Oh my God, how selfish am I?
And that's exactly it, because many times, with the karmic relationship, what I've found is, in using the written in the stars and the astrology charts, is that it actually tends to be what we call like that inner child relationship for both partners. But that
Mm.
doesn't mean that both people are going to be open and willing and growing and healing at exactly the same rate. So
Mm. Mm.
traditionally, even though it's both an inner child healing relationship, one person always kind of reaches that point of being like, wait a second, like I deserve this too. I deserve my own love. This is what I'm worth. And so when that person steps away, whether it's just their own sense of inner survival's guilt, or the other person tries to make them feel guilty, which can be incredibly common too in these connections, the idea is to recognize, where is the guilt coming from? Is it coming
Mm.
from a place of truly feeling bad that you had to leave this relationship? Is it coming from a place where you're recognizing that you're still in process, that you're still learning, that choosing yourself is never a selfish thing?
Okay, I just need to replay that 1,000 times. I want to read this beautiful opening from your book, and where did I put that? Of course, here it is. Okay, and then we're going to go to a break, and we're going to come out, and we're going to talk about twin flames. So right at the beginning, you say, letter to the reader, dear one, the universe always has your back. I know that it's not been easy, that love has only equaled confusion, and that amid the strongest storms, you've doubted yourself. You've doubted your own magnificence. You've your own divine essence. You forgot that you're a part of this universe as much as the stars are, as much as the sun that beats down on your hot, bare skin. But it's time to come home to yourself, to return to yourself. The journey of love is designed to do precisely this, to help you see that every love, no matter how little time it lasted, no matter how much it broke your heart, was intended to help you become more you than you've ever been, to help you strip away the layers, the masks of all that you never were, so that you could feel your heartbeat in sync with the world around you. So there's so much more in here, but oh my goodness, that is so wonderful. So we're going to take a quick break and we will be right back and talk all about twin flames.
Mm.
And we're back. So, Kate, let's talk about what we are really excited
Absolutely.
about, what we all want. And
Everybody wants
I
the
have
twin flame.
I have to shout out my husband, Dana Walden, for being my twin
Oh,
flame. And I'm so grateful I found him. Oh my God. But let's for people who don't know the difference between soulmate or twin flame and soulmate, please break it down for us.
so, especially in looking at and breaking down that aspect of soulmate and twin flame. So, the soulmate is the relationship that you're basically taught or conditioned, told to be into, whereas the twin flame is one that really represents your authentic self, who you truly are at that point. And so, in these connections and in this relationship that we have, the soulmate really is kind of that introduction to your love journey, where the twin flame is one that comes in after we've moved through a great deal of our own personal healing. Um, our own healing is never something that we are going to finish. It's never something that we reach a destination on. It's almost like beginning a journey that we know ultimately will have no end. Once we have moved through so many of the lessons in life of understanding and learning our own truth, and once we are at the place of understanding our worth and being more aware of our inner child wounds, usually at that point is one of the first times in our life where we are feeling actually content with ourselves. We are feeling at home with ourselves, as that introduction said. And because of that, we're no longer radiating this sense of lack to the universe and to the world. We're not looking for someone because we need to feel chosen. We're not looking for a relationship to validate our worth or lovability. And so, in this situation, is when we tend to attract our twin flame. there's been a great deal written on the twin flame connection. At one point, many of the writings, and you had referenced the 70s, many of the original writings from twin flames actually were based in this period of time. But what they actually described, we just didn't know it yet, was the karmic connection. And this is where you're seeing those themes of the runner and the chaser, which is more indicative of what the karmic relationship represents. The twin flame is a relationship that truly is the coming together of two healing adults. It is the relationship that allows you to continue to grow and feel loved and accepted for who you are.
Oh my goodness. That's what it's all about.
Mm.
That's what we want. So in order to get there, in some way, it feels like the karmic relationship helps us to have it's kind of like the gym that we work out, we get our muscles so that we can withstand the love of the twin flame. And you also say
Yeah.
that the twin flame might not be what you expect. There might be
Mhm.
something odd or different, or it's not prescribed. It doesn't necessarily come with a white picket fence.
No, usually it's the type of relationship for, if we're looking at soulmate, karmic, and twin flame, it is
Mhm.
more traditional to come together with your twin flame later in life. Not because we didn't deserve to have that healthy, amazing love early on, but because we needed to go through everything to learn who we are and what that would even look like. So, in this connection, usually when we reach the twin flame, we are more unapologetically ourselves. We're not necessarily subscribing to this is how love looks, this is how a relationship should look. So, at this point, a lot of times we kind of let go of that typical having a type. We're more open
Mm.
to talking with people. We're focusing more on those emotional needs, the needs of our soul, rather than how tall are they? What job do they have? Where does their family come from? And so in that we tend to end up falling in love and being in a relationship that maybe our 20 or 30-year-old self might not have ever been attracted to, but which ends up fulfilling all that we've ever really needed from love.
I think I mean, if somebody's watching or listening to this and they're like, "Well, I want that. How do I get that?" Maybe, I mean, read the book, obviously, read Written in the Stars by Kate Rose. But I think where our work overlaps is, I think dream work is soul work.
Mhm.
And when we pay attention to our dreams, when we journal about our dreams, when we pay attention to the breadcrumbs our dreams are leading, we tend to live more soulfully. And in
Mhm.
some way, we tend to kind of build up soul muscles, or we get stronger in our soul, which by definition makes the things of the ego, those are still nice and lovely, but they're not driving. And I always reference Robert Moss's book, Dreaming the Soul Back Home, where he talks about how the soul is often leaving because it doesn't want to be a part of a life that's not lived soulfully. And so getting to know the soul is really important, and honoring that first and foremost. I think for myself, I remember when I got together with Dana, somebody was saying, but I had been with the guy before that was more of a soulmate that kind of ticked all the boxes of
Mhm.
who I was supposed to be with, and Dana was exactly not any of those things, except he was wonderful in
Mhm.
his own ways, but there were so many reasons not to be with him. On paper, it was not what I was looking for at all, but except for the fact that my soul was very happy to be with him, and my
Which
soul was
is
kind of
most important.
exactly. So
Mhm.
it's interesting. And I remember Carolyn May saying something like, when it's strange, it's the hand of God.
Mhm.
So I feel like that kind of connects
It
to
really
this.
does. I mean, many times, especially let's say the twin flame, oftentimes it even kind of comes into our life unexpectedly. We're not out there searching for the twin
Right.
flame. We're in that space where we're either learning, we're growing, we're focusing on ourselves, and all of a sudden it's like that divine hand kind of comes in and signals that it's time to start a new chapter. And because the aspect with the twin flame, as healthy and wonderful as it is, because it's so unlike any relationship that we've had before, it still brings lessons. but they're not painful.
Right.
They're not hurtful like they were previously. The major lesson of the twin flame relationship is learning to receive. Because prior to this, it's that idea of, will our needs have been met by other people?
Mhm.
Were we taught that we were too much or not enough? And so having someone in
Mm.
front of you that truly is like, I love you, and I know you're going to grow. I know you're going to change, but I'm here. And suddenly you're having your needs met and you're receiving all that you ever needed, but which no other relationship was meant to provide. It really challenges us to learn how to open to receive.
And they're still in human form, so there will
Mhm.
be there will
Or
be
imperfectly
personality.
perfect. Yes.
Exactly, exactly. But so that being what we want, we need to, if we want that, because I know so many people right now are
Mhm.
struggling in this area. It's, I mean, no matter what else is going on in their lives, financial, health, or whatever,
Absolutely.
relationships tend to be at the heart of everything that's going on with us, whether we're lonely or whether we're with somebody that we feel stuck with, or we're in the right relationship and we just want to be able to develop the ability to be with it and not push it away. So many people push away. I had a session with a woman the other day that said, I just got out of a 10-year relationship and then I suddenly met this guy who's so amazing. I'm just
Mhm.
not ready yet. Bam.
Mhm.
Hello, twin flame.
Exactly.
Inconvenient.
And that's what I mean, receiving. You have to, being open to it is learning how to receive, even if it's not on your timing.
Right. So not watching the pot boil that will never boil, like get
Mhm.
busy and get, maybe to hijack the system, get into a place where you don't want that person to come in.
Well,
And
and
then,
I mean, it's, there's a little bit of, kind of a puzzle in the answer, but that idea of, okay, how do I get my twin flame? What can I do to attract this person into my life? The answer is to become it yourself. And so
yeah,
that means not
that's it.
only are we now on a journey of saying, okay, well, what childhood wounds did I have? Do I love myself? Do I know I'm worthy? But it's also kind of invites that space of, what would it look like for you to date yourself, to move and act as if there was no lack in your life, that you're taking yourself out, you're celebrating yourself, you're opening champagne on a Wednesday evening simply because. Because when we become what it is we're seeking, we're also going to stand a better chance of attracting it.
Ooh, that is, yeah, like Miley Cyrus said, we can buy ourselves flowers. I can buy
Absolutely.
myself flowers. And I think all the Jungians out there, the people that love Robert Johnson and Carl Jung, it's such an unromantic paradigm that they say that there's the animus to our anima, our other
Mhm.
half, is usually somebody we're not supposed to be with. They're
Mhm.
supposed to challenge us to become them, and then we don't need them, and then we're fulfilled, and then we attract the person that we are supposed to be with, but it's not that karmic relationship. So it's very interesting when
Yeah.
somebody says, I have to be with that person or
Well,
I'll die.
yes, I feel like my arm was cut off because they're not in my life. I can't breathe. I can't eat. I can't sleep. That's all those signs that this is a karmic connection. And you're being guided to look at, what are you seeking from this person that you haven't yet given yourself? Because that healthy love, as I'm sure you've experienced with Dana, it doesn't come with that sense of urgency. There's not that feeling that we're going to die. It actually strengthens both of us and helps us be able to become more of those people that we're meant to be.
Yeah. Yeah. It becomes the love math where it's 1 plus 1 equals 11, as
Hmm.
opposed to maybe the karmic relationship is 1 minus 1 equals 0.
Yeah, I
And
was going to even say like 1 plus 1 is negative one.
exactly. Well, yeah, negative, because often it's like, oh, I'm feeling fine by myself. But then
Mhm.
once there's that friction, it's kind of like just like underground. Yeah.
But that, you even raised a good point, and I always say that so many people, let's say they're like, okay, I'm doing the work, I'm learning, I'm growing. Why did I attract a karmic relationship into my life? And it's that space of, we would all be completely at peace and happy if we were Buddhist monks living on a mountaintop, because we're not
Right.
interacting with people. We're not having to figure out date night. We're not having to date after having children and divorce and figuring out in-laws or sick friends. There's nothing there. But in our human existence of relationships in the container that they offer, we're going to inherently always have friction. There's always going to be lessons. And the sooner that we can open, instead of saying, okay, I can't live without this person, I'm going to do whatever it takes to make it work, the sooner we can look into the lessons, then the more readily we're going to be able to move forward into that healthy love that we really want.
Yeah, I think for me and for a lot of people that I am connected with, one of the ways to move through the lessons is to take some space and to not
Mhm.
necessarily get into the fray. It
Yes.
doesn't mean, running away from any conflict, but taking space and not fighting from that adrenalized place of fight and flight or I have to be right and
No, and the
like giving
trauma
it to
bond that
ourselves.
those create, by the off again, on again, or the really good highs, but then the lows are awful, but then we're trying to work to get back to the highs, and it creates
Yes.
that bond. So
Those
usually when
damn
I
highs.
oh, those highs though, they really they keep us in it. And that's what I always say too, is that we feel those connections and those karmic connections so deeply because if we didn't have that attraction and that bond, there's nobody that would stick around for these lessons. There was nobody that would stick around for the lows.
Right.
And so we need all of it into our life and it does all serve a higher purpose. And it's not a matter of some people say like my picker is broken. Maybe I'm not meant to be loved. Maybe I'm meant to be single the rest of my life. While we all have the ability to choose the life that we want to live, having relationships that didn't last forever is no indication that you can't have one in the future. It all
Mhm.
comes down to what we want to believe in. And that aspect that you just mentioned, a lot of times I do advise people that sometimes the most beneficial, loving thing that we can do is take time for ourselves, learning to date ourselves, being single, finding peace and validation in our own presence. Because again, that just continues to fill up our own cup, which will benefit us on any relationship.
And the big takeaway I think what I'm taking from this is whatever it is I'm wanting from
Hmm.
anyone else, give it to myself
Yes.
and walk around as if I already have that.
Hmm.
And then like approach these relationships cleanly, not from a place of neediness. I must be validated. I must be given respect. I must be loved. It's like I'm coming from an overflow and then I'm more apt to attract. And if I'm meant to make an impact or a change, then it's more likely to come from there. But
Exactly.
it's a slippery slope sometimes. Oh my goodness.
Mm.
Kate Rose, I so appreciate you and this book. So when you get this book, you want to look up your astrology signs, and you can do that on some of the easy apps or some of the places to get it. Like CoStar? Do you think that's a good place?
CoStar, Cafe Astrology, the pattern can sometimes have good ones, but you just need the basic information. Cafe Astrology does a lot of the masculine and feminine planets, which I mentioned in there, and not a lot
Mhm,
of the other apps don't always include that. But then there's blank charts that people can fill out, and
mhm.
when they're ready, the truth of whatever relationship they're wondering about will be there for them.
So, Kate, as we're wrapping this up, and I want people to go to your website, which is wordsofkaterose.com.
Yes.
Is there anything else you would like to leave our listeners and viewers with? Any thoughts?
I hope that everyone knows that everything that you've been through hasn't been random. And it's not because there's any sort of failure on your part or that you are not enough. You are learning and becoming. And with that means that the lessons that you're going through are going to shape the very life that you're dreaming of living.
Ooh, Kate Rose, thank you so much. You are so wise and so beautiful, and your book is so amazing. Thank you so
Mhm.
much for sharing
Thank
this
you
with
so much,
us.
Julie.
And until we all meet again, don't take your dreams lying down. Don't take your astrology chart lying down. Don't take your relationships lying down.
Love it.
Set some boundaries, become the one you're with, and we'll see you next time. Thank you so much.